Um, to hi, let's start that again. Oh, this is really going slow. Hi, today I'm going to talk about the Mary Miller. She's Congresswoman Mary Miller. She's on the Freedom Caucus. She's on the list. And her staffers of my most recent letter. And that's I want an investigation into why the American people or groups, factions are resolving or resorting to attacking the Capitol. As I say, when I started working there in 1981, there was no security. And this is a trajectory that's been going on since then. I'll get into this with the rise of the Fourth Reich and the different ingredients of the soup in building a Fourth Reich on the model of the Third Reich, because it really has been repeat. So she began her term on January 3rd, 2021. 3 days she was at the Capitol. She was president of the Capitol. That, to formally count the votes of the when Congress met and certify the results of the 2020 presidential election. She was one of the reps who objected to the votes of Arizona and Pennsylvania. Illinois. So now the thing is, the American electoral process always has been reputed to be the most transparent and above board. We do the whole, I'm looking like with the congressional members that I'm looking at now, and this, I have seen this as an issue in the debates of just redrawing districts constantly. I mean, this produces man hours of work to be doing this in the first place. So you're wasting resources there. Instead of addressing the real issues from a bipartisan perspective, they just redraw the maps so they can get favoritism with Republican voters or Democratic voters. And I don't know if the Republicans are more guilty of that than the Democrats. For me, it's neither here nor there. That's got to stop. As I say, just from the perspective of the chaos that it creates, the extra man hours and administrative work that it creates just to get into the political party politics, it has got to stop, as much as all of this money being injected into the election process, which again, is wasted resources. Sure, it provides Mandevilian jobs for all of the jailbait coming out of colleges who need to get into the political game and the Republican and Democratic machines and grapple the ladder of success and get the jobs up on Capitol Hill when the person that they've worked on the campaign for wins. That'll give them entry in there. Otherwise, there was one, pretty sure, yeah, it was Andy Biggs that I was looking at. Oh, he's got 2 jailbaits in there, setting him up like the Como. He's a sitting duck for the Como game, if we can call it, which is no due process for, you know, any young thing who says, oh, he offended me by touching me or hugging me. Right away, well, it doesn't matter what the man's intention was, it just mattered what the perception of the woman, and if she was offended, like Meghan Markle and the me you can't see, how should we say that, campaigns on mental health in the United States, which stop enabling these little prima donnas. I'm just such a delicate flower, anything bothers me. Oh God, how I hate the delicate flowers of this world. So this is a battle between not the sexes, between the little ladies out there, the feminists and the anti-feminists. I saw something, I'm going to read this. This gets into Moms for America. So this really, what really brought this on my radar, and I started looking into this, was this comment about Hitler that she was, this is Mary Miller, that she was criticized for. So on January 5th, 2021, 2 days into her House term, Miller issued a prepared speech to the conservative group Moms for America. She quoted Adolf Hitler saying, each generation has the responsibility to teach and train the next generation. You know, if we win a few elections, we're still going to be losing until we win the hearts and mind of our children. This is the battle. Hitler was right on one thing. He said, whoever has the youth has the future. A number of groups and politically strong, a number of groups and politicians strongly condemned the comment, harshly criticizing Miller, and exhorted the Republican Party to do likewise. Public statements were issued by the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, Anti-Defamation League, World Jewish Congress, and multiple lawmakers, including Adam Kinzinger and Illinois Governor Pritzker. I'm sure these are Democrats. Well, yeah. Okay, he's a businessman, philanthropist, part of the Pritzker group. As I say, I put $1 down that he's Democrat, but yeah, see, Democrat, businessman, and philanthropist. These days, that's an earmark for concern. Because philanthropist just means he's got some charities where he can throw his ill-gotten gains. And like the person, you know, the guy who shows up at the church on Sunday and throws big wad of money into the collection box in front of everybody to make him look good while he's stabbing people in the back, and unfair trade practices and all of that, and exploiting people all week long. God sees what you're doing during the week as much as when you're throwing big water trash in the basket or into one of your philanthropic efforts, which are tax deductible. Gets in here. Representative Jan Schwarzkowski, Senator Tammy Duckworth, and the Illinois Legislative Jewish Caucus called for Miller's resignation. The woman just gets on board and already they're telling her, get out of town. it cracks me up. I was watching, was it Chuck Schumer? He was with some guy, you know, locked up there, and he was like, well, the guy was like, no, I've been here for 72 hours. It's like 72 hours, no, in Washington for 72 hours. And Schumer just said, I thought it was actually kind of funny and I guess a good response. Because in that type of situation, you do not want to incite any kind of panic in anybody. And he just said, well, it's not normally like that around here. Poor guy, he arrives and all of a sudden they're attacking him. He's not responsible. He's just trying to come in and figure out what the hell's going on. And his staffers aren't going to be helping him much on that one. This is the problem. Because they're all, you know, DC, their interest are their careers in DC, and that's it. The kids they got working up on Capitol Hill. And this is, as she said, whoever has the youth has the future. So see, Mary Miller is right, is very much right. I'm going to show that here. So she's not, you know, some wacko outright extremist. In fact, the ones who are attacking her are the extremists because they're trying to silence her. And in fact, you'll see. On January 14th, Schwakozy, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, said that she would introduce a measure to censor Miller. Silence her. Freedom of speech. ADL Midwest Regional Director David Goldberg shared with Miller's office a list of 12 anti-Semitic incidents and 17 instances of white supremacist propaganda in the 15th district in, well, that must be her district, 2019 and 2020, in an effort to make Miller aware of what was going on in and around her district, he said, including information about extremist activity. Yeah, well, that's all I'm asking with Biden's report, March 2021 report on domestic violence extremists. And I've been naming them in my videos now in all of these Machiavellian games. I want an investigation into these people. And I don't, you know, this is not just white American women, trophy wives, whatever category you want to put me in, white supremacists, which most of the white people I know, family and friends, in one way or another, are promoting the alt-right or alt-left white supremacist ideologies. This gets into which, for example, my young sister, that's white supremacist, but Mandevillean libertine, yet at the same time, a lot of times she goes Republican. You know, so it's, there's no, if you actually sit down with each individual person who's involved, whether they have an NGO or not, or involved in my case, the network of family and friends who want to shut me up, just like this, censor me, because I'm going to rock their little boat, which the end game, there are common denominator in ideological thinking, whether they be the left or the right, is I just want to party. And fame and fortune for me in whatever portion of the pie I can grab, and the world be damned. So on January 7th, Miller's office tweeted that her remarks had been intended to compare alleged youth indoctrination efforts by left-wing radicals to those of Hitler. And she's very much right, while nonetheless encouraging Republicans to aggressively appeal to the youth as a means to collective power. That's what I've been trying to do. On January 8th, Miller apologized for having quoted Hitler in the message, but accused critics of twisting her words. Okay, I understand, and and she's like kindergarten congressperson. She's just arrived. She's she is is it a farm? I forget. She and her husband, because her husband is Chris Miller. He's a Republican politician. He's in the House at the state level. So they own a farm near Charleston where they grow grain and raise cattle. So that, it is definitely agrarian interests. They have 7 children and 17 grandchildren. So I don't know, I guess I'd have to interview the children and look up the children and the stuff, the get a horn on, because raising 7 children is work. If you do it right, not like Ethel Kennedy, 11, and you leave them to a father who's been assassinated, a lot of emotional stuff that these kids, would have gone through. I mean, I'm fit to be tied, not being with my 2 sons in the past 15 years. And I mean, there was a lot of damage done by my husband. I mean, everything really started in Bogota and why we left Bogota, but I won't deviate. So as I say, just having a lot of kids does not make you a good mother. I mean, we got Ethel Kennedy as an example. On the right, you got Sarah Palin. The pit bull with lipstick. I mean, I use that analogy in my social media campaigns as well. But I'm like, I'm a real pit bull with lipstick. And while I may just have 2 kids, because that's all, God wanted to give me. When I was little, I used to say I wanted 100. Now, when I had 2, and as an expat, so I had, this was also in Brussels, all the American women, that was over in Waterloo, we were in Stockel, and I didn't have a car until the end. Then I did join, but I'd go there once in a while because it was, just one of these little social gathering clubs. And I spent, up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, because both of them were born in Brussels and they're not even 2 years apart. So anyone who's had young toddlers like that and no assistance anywhere, babysitters, mothers, friends, you're on call 24/7. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you're tired or sick. So, you know, it's work, but it is also, as I say, the most satisfying work I've ever done. And what has, you know, this is also with everybody's jobs and their houses and their material positions. I'm like, well, that never defined me. I mean, this is also getting back into the workplace in Washington all of these years. It's ridiculous. I had a stellar career from the time I was 15 and when I was babysitting, which is what got me my job with former Senator Bennett Johnston from Louisiana. And contrary to everybody else out there, I didn't get it from, you know, any my mom had very close levels with the Republicans, particularly the Arizona John McCain. But she threatened to throw me out of the house. Long story, so I won't get in there, but see, I'm sure that's what all of the debutante bullshit that we couldn't afford. Washington Debutante Party was in 1981. She was really afraid I was going to get into politics with the Democrats, the liberals. She didn't, if she had taken any interest in her daughter's lives, she would have realized how deceived I was with Capitol Hill and not worried about it. Well, wasn't until 1980, 81, 82 that, I mean, it took me a year or two to be like, no, this is, and then the poli-sci stuff that they were teaching at GW, I was like, what the hell is this bullshit? And one of our problems today, precisely, it was bullshit. And I want to go through the academic stuff that's been taught in the universities. And I mean, my forte is the social sciences, but across the board, I'm going to be looking at that stuff with a fine-tooth comb. So that's where I want to talk about the rise of the Fourth Reich and how, you know, Mary Miller, she is correct in what she says, that we need to win the hearts and minds of our children. Now, this is precisely what was done and has been done since the 60s. I mean, as I say, you can say, oh, okay, well, it was the 80s. Well, no, it actually started a little bit before that. So let's just put it at the 80s with the Reagan era and the trickle down, because that's where you really had the escalation of the war on drugs, which parallels the prohibition, leading to the crash of 29, and which had followed the Gilded Age. So that's where you have parallel the Golden Age and the Gilded Age, and this party hardy and death of the liberal class, Chris Hedges' book. And I was watching today about Bobby. It's called, it's a Netflix. It's a good documentary, docuseries. Oh, I didn't write it down. It's on Netflix about Bobby Kennedy. Sorry, I didn't mark down the, but it was going in a lot because it went into Bobby's campaign for president after his brother has been assassinated. And Ethel, I mean, you know, just more and more I see of her, she was a good time party girl from a very Republican family. Her father thought she was a communist. It was. She had no political ideologies whatsoever. She was just there because the party, that's where the party was. And of course, when her husband was killed, the partying was over. But with her NGO, she found a way to keep the partying going. With a fraudulent NGO because of human rights. I mean, she's just in bed with the libertine feminist Democrats, minoritist and affirmative actionists. They're all in, so and Miller shouldn't have to apologize because she made a reference to Hitler saying, we're in the same place today. And he was right about this and he was right about that. Because that is how he got into power, how Trump got into power, because you can even see what they needed was a messiah. Because Hitler was not the brains behind this. They needed a front guy, someone who was good up on stage and could animate the people. I mean, if I wanted to control the world, I certainly wouldn't run for president or any of this. I'd find my little puppets that then I have in my pocket. And who were dumb idiots, we're not going to understand anything, where our educational and socialization process comes in. So I loved this one comment I marked on that from that docuseries was Bobby was going through the Black communities, and this is, you see how he won over the different minority factions, but with let's be friends, and this is when Martin Luther King has been assassinated. You take out the where they took out the leadership and some sort of cohesive, peaceful force within the African American community. And I think if Booker T. Washington had been given more of a voice and it hadn't become a dispute between Booker T. Washington and Du Bois over affirmative action back in 1910, you would have seen another trajectory. That's where I get into Curtis Parker Wilcox, my grandfather. I love this. So the Black man says, don't walk through our misery to your headline. Don't use our misery for you to be able to get up on a podium. See, this started then, and now it's just gone ballistic. The number of NGOs, think tanks, I mean, this has become a fad. You see, particularly after the 1980s, but it started a bit before that. It really started, sorry, it's cold here, I've got hot water bottle. In the 1950s, and this I'm going to get into the expat wives NGOs. Let's just call them wives clubs, NGOs, because there's a lot of crossover. My Global Expat is modeled after the Federation of American Women's Club overseas, with the idea that you'll have chapters in different countries around the world where the incoming families and mothers have a network and a support network when they arrive to help with their, finding a place to live. There are schools for their children, just a daily living, so that you just don't arrive and you're all alone with these babies like I was. So, I went through that, and I appreciated the Paris. I got involved. It was then it was just a play group for little toddlers. And I was just a member because I'm, on my own with two. They're no longer babies, but they are toddlers, which you're not hopefully getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning anymore. But it's 6 to 9, 10 o'clock by the time you finish, cleaning everything up, you're getting some ironing done because they're not around. Oh God, I'd never pull out an iron with running around. Too many accidents with that. I'm like, no. Husband shirts get ironed. The rest of this stuff gets thrown in the dryer for a second. Oh Lord. There's women's modern conveniences have liberated women much more since the 1950s than the women's rights movement ever did. And the 1950s, because it does get into this, my mother, the picture perfect wife, dressing like Jackie Onassis. I mean, my mom was, she was Republican, but she definitely had the look of Jackie O, just like so many women back then, whether they be on the right or the left. And it was this picture perfect. And oh my God, when Jackie O speaks, she sounds like Marilyn Monroe, dumb blonde. So never say anything that anybody is not going to like. And this is exactly why the right, which is the alt-right, won't give me a voice any more than the alt-left. I mean, I've always been a progressive and always been, most of my entourage, whether it be the right or the left, when I stand up like I did at the American Embassy in Bogota, to question the civil servant from the State Department about their Plan Colombia and what were they doing about the escalating drug consumption in the United States that was the motor behind the drug production in South America and Latin America, and therefore the violence and the corruption. And the jackass just responded, what do you care, lady, as long as we get rid of it here. Now, when I will stand up and say that type of stuff in public to the biggest bigwig out there. I don't care if it's the managing director, Christine Lagarde of the IMF, the president of the World Bank, the president of the frickin' United States, or even God himself. Now, my mom used to always tell me when I was a child, I would argue with God. And I said, if he was wrong, I would. Keep on saying, he and I are pretty much on the same page lately. It's just everybody else that I disagree with. So I think I have somebody in my camp, and actually it's somebody better than all of you guys. So we'll see. But so anyway, I wanted to get into, but I was seeing with this the docu-series, again, this infiltration of hypocrisy within the Democratic Party and pomp and circumstance, because really Jackie O brought that into the White House, as did, or brought it back into the White House, as did Nancy Reagan of the other side. And that's very much a la Queen Elizabeth II. And getting the monarchy onto a public forum in the press, which has exploded. And now we got the paparazzis, and now they're complaining about it. But even Winston Churchill, that was Queen Elizabeth's coronation. I think that was really where you can pinpoint the start of that. Winston Churchill even warned Queen Elizabeth II about putting that on TV and making it into a public spectacle, and the backlash that that would bring. And he was right. Now, Winston Churchill, his mother had 200 lovers. I hate that when they use that word, because I'm like, well, that's not love to me. So if maybe she had been more, you know, the parenting of Prince William and Catherine instead of Queen Victoria, then you know, I would have seen something different with Winston Churchill, because Winston Churchill also was part of the imperialism that helped bring in World War I and World War II. I guess he was, I forget what age he was when at World War I, but he was around. I think he was an adult. So he wouldn't have been involved in necessarily the rise of that, but he definitely was an imperialist, a true imperialist. And part of that imperialism of Britain can be traced back to after the death of Prince Albert and Queen Victoria's seclusion, if you will. It's kind of the same type of reaction as you saw from Ethel Kennedy. So again, it just shows you how these narcissistic, entitled, spoiled, you know, little ladies who want to prance around and just have everybody, you know, bowing down to them and scraping at them, is timeless, as well as on the alt-right and on the alt-left. And it really is the women who inject the norms and standards and what is considered acceptable and what is not acceptable. That's why nobody likes me speaking up and saying things, because when I say something, I have facts and knowledge, and lots of knowledge. But otherwise, I keep my mouth shut. If I'm around somebody who either I think is so stupid that I don't want to get in an argument, so I'm just going to sit there and listen and take note, or I find what they have to say interesting, then I don't have much to say. So a lot of people, I'm sure, you know, have interpreted that as me being, I mean, I am shy, that yes, but like not listening, or not some dumb bimbo or something, just because I'm not sitting there, you know, blabbing away on something, it's either because I do have something to say and I really don't want to get into an argument with you because it's either not the time or place, or I know it would just be futile. So I'm not going to waste my energy or my breath. I mean, if you have an obligation, a legal obligation, either in public duty or professional duty to do something, then I'm not going to stay silent. But in normal conversations with jackasses, I usually just, whatever. I'm not going to look for a fight just to look for a fight. And I'm not ever going to look for a fight, but if you come out with some jackass thing or something that's false, and I know to be false, then I will say something. And I'll speak my mind, and you won't be able to shut me up. As you can see from some of my videos. I guess that's why I'm doing a monologue, because nobody in Washington wants to listen to me. Because I'm not their friend, and they don't like what I have to say. And this gets into my problems with this because I was looking at Moms for America. And what's her name? Fletcher, Kimberly Fletcher. And she was at the, I'm pretty sure they've gotten in some problems because they were at they are on January 6th, and a lot of her rhetoric and ideologies is what helped incite the violence. So I don't really know why. I'm not sure if I pulled this one up. I had a whole bunch of Wikipedias. No, hold on. Moms for America. I mean, the good thing about Wikipedia is it's just not the information, it's not from the website, because if you want to see about their propaganda and all of that. And there's also all sorts of other ones, Concerned Moms for America. There's Moms Rising. But that I know on the left, because that they were up on a podium, the head of that, for a Moms Rising conference by Nancy Pelosi. So see, you have this Moms Rising, Moms for America, same difference on the right and alt-right and alt-left, because the woman from Moms Rising, when I got up and asked the question about the damage the alpha dominance feminist movement has done, she didn't know what I was talking about. I don't think she'd ever heard the word alpha dominance feminist in her life. Now, I've been sitting here for 24/7 for the past 15 years, because when my ex, he blocked my computer, I won't get into that. I didn't have computer access, internet access, anything during 2008, during my divorce. And I was basically camping out in my house like I am here, with no heat, just keeping electricity and running water, because all my assets had been blocked by the courts in order to shut me up and intimidate me, which I wasn't going to let them do. My mother, whose good friend was campaign manager for John McCain, didn't want to get involved. John McCain wouldn't want to get involved in such unpleasantness during a campaign year. I'm like, are you kidding? He's got Pitbull for lipstick as his vice president. He would have had the presidency in his pocket if his campaign people had, we're going to save her and her Global Expats project, because it is not an NGO. It is turning the Expat Wives Club model into a money-making business that would assist in fulfilling the Sustainable Development Goals, would assist in promotion of basically everything that the international development community says that they're doing or needs to be done, but are not doing because they're too busy partying and attending high-level meetings, Davos, World Economic Forum, IMF, World Bank, annual and spring meetings, and a whole slew of other ones. And everybody just, Capitol Hill does the same bullshit. And it's going on all over the place with think tanks in Washington. So all of these NGOs, and it's interesting, I'm not going to get into that today because I got a lot to cover, but it got into this 501 nonprofit status. And that I'm really going to be attacking in the courts and in Nuremberg trials 2 type of investigation, because that's been instrumental. Everybody's finding little loopholes any place that they possibly can, and everybody's turning a blind eye to what all of these NGOs are actually doing, because they got all of the experts, they've got all academia in their pockets, and everybody's making too much money, just like the domestic violence industry, just like the human rights industry, just like the public service industry, which is, the employees of Capitol Hill, the White House, all of these government agencies that when they finish there, they retire to the think tanks and are able to cash in on their contacts and the rhetoric that they've been espousing, even though it all is either alt-right or alt-left, and have been part of the great divide that's been increasingly going on in Washington in the past 50 years, 60 years, 40 years, or we want to. So I really wanted, I guess I'll just get into this and I'll leave this Fletcher woman for another day. So it's important that the education of the educational system and what's being taught in the schools to children. I have to agree with, particularly Megyn Kelly, particularly talks about this, these woke ideologies, these things. There is complaining this, I believe it was this Fletcher woman who had said, this was a testimony in Congress, that her child had been taught in the school, in the public school, that since he was white, he was bad. I was like, well, yeah, that really explains all the targeting, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, okay, the only places I go these days is to the post office and Safeway. Or any of the little, I know all of the different prices. I know where I can get the best price on some goat cheese or some gorgonzola cheese. But because you don't have to pay, you can get it for like, I found it like $6 a pound for gorgons. That's a great price. That's American. That's the highlight of my day. I know they look at me because they're like, oh, great. Here the woman comes in Safeway and she's gonna sit there looking around. for half an hour and just buy one little thing. I'm like, oh, I just need to get out of the four walls sometimes, and you know, that's my highlight, my excitement. But anyway, I am getting, you know, more and more sick and tired of the attitude that I get, just the open hatred and viciousness of the Black women at the post office. And these are the ones, you know, working there. They're supposed to be serving me. And this poor Latina woman was in the post office as the Adams Morgan one. And there's a young girl who's very nice, and she should be given lessons on customer service. If they were all like that, it wouldn't be a problem. See, it really, you take this and you multiply it. And as I keep on telling the Black women here, we're bitches. And when I complain to the managers, and I tell them, you know, right out, not all the time because I don't want to start a fight, but just because the white bitches over from Cleveland Park in Northwest are being bitches to you all and arrogant and need a lesson in manners and etiquette like you can't believe, it is no excuse for you people to be acting just the same and worse, you know, or worse. And it is escalating the tension between the races. And as I get into White Trash by Nancy Eisenberg, this is about class, a class war, not a race war. That's why I get attitude from the same denigration and hate crimes against me by the white bitches out there who want to appear to be ladies because they hang out in country clubs, the Real Housewives of Potomac and Real Housewives of Orange County and all that crap. It's just a Stepford wife. But a libertine instead of the 1950s alt-right Stepford wife. I mean, it really is, you know, pushing the buttons, because it's then the women get pissed off and they go and bitch to the men, their husbands, their poor henpecked husbands, because bitching, bullying women henpeck their husbands and their children until everybody just goes, if you will shut up, we will just do whatever you want. There was this one of the moms for America, she did this article. Oh, I guess I'll get into that next time. But on Animal Farm, George Orwell. And that also got into homeschooling. This is another trend that has got to stop. And this gets into, wait a second, I don't like what they're teaching in public schools, so I'm going to put them in charter schools if I can't apply to private school, or I'm going to homeschool. Homeschooling is not a good option. Even if you have the time as a mother, which would mean you don't have a life. You need a separate life from your children so that when they leave the nest, you have other options and other interests. I mean, I don't know any mother out there who was more dedicated to her children and still is, even I know they don't understand that. it's also, they've been filled with their heads with a lot of bullshit. But now, it's not their immediate safety of them learning not to put their fingers in a light socket, like when babies. Now it's, you people keep this up, because my sons have French, Spanish, and American nationalities. They're going to end up in a war, drafted, or a civil war. You're going to have to kill me before that ever, I'll ever allow that to happen, or I'll shut up about anything that I know is going to lead to that end. And that's what keeps me going day after day after day after day with I don't have a nonprofit. I won't do that, because then you have to go after donor money, and it's all in corporate pockets or wealthy people's pockets, which I know a lot of. I mean, there's a donation button on War on Domestic Terrorism. I've had it there a long time. I've never gotten any money. I don't solicit any money, but I know a lot of people with a lot of money, which throw pennies at me, and I would be able to keep a roof over my head in Washington. But they've all canceled me. And that with Foxcroft, you see how Foxcroft, the old guard, are descendants of the robber barons, white supremacists. They've canceled me. And Foxcroft, their courageous conversation and trustees, is just in the pockets of the alt-left, Black supremacists, and LGBT. Now, Foxcroft always had a reputation for having a lot of lesbians that went there. It's a girls' school. Which, as I say, I had quite a few of my friends ended up being lesbian. I really didn't think about it at the time. It was when I was in college that I heard that one. But anyway, so it really, and this is where I show with Foxcroft, my letter to Foxcroft, that the prep schools, the East Coast prep schools, and these are the ones who set the lead, if you will, in the country, and the Ivy League colleges need to decide if they're vehicles for social climbers who just want to live the good life and keep up with the Joneses, even though the Joneses are taking this world off a cliff in terms of global warming, as much as our trajectory towards civil wars and another world war. So, do you exist for that, to just be a vehicle for social climbers, whoever, can come up with the money through scholarships or whatever means, or is it to educate a informed, intelligent, knowledgeable, and curious? God, my mom, when she would say intellectual curiosity, we would all roll our eyes as kids, because it meant sitting in a museum for 5 or 6 hours, reading the panel of everything and listening to her art history class about every single painting. When you do that, from the time that you can remember, so I guess toddlers know, but it really turns you off. Now, I mean, I go to museums, and I love going to museums. The Louvre, I've seen, most of it, but over many, 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 many years. Anytime I go, I try to go through some portion that I haven't visited yet, because it's huge. The Prados is smaller, I know. That one I got down pat with my visit. Okay, what's the age? Boys of 11 to, around 11 years old. Oh, I know what painting I'm taking them to. As I always say, I had a deal. We go to Planet Hollywood for a hamburger, an American hamburger, which is an outing in Madrid. I don't think Planet Hollywood exists anymore, but maybe there's a American hamburger place, which is nice to have one in Madrid. It really was. And that's, because it was a good hamburger. This is not McDonald's. And okay, no complaining. And we go to Planet Hollywood afterwards. And you don't sit there and make the kids and give them a frickin', lecture that would bore anybody on every single painting. I go to Dali. There's the Jardin des Delicias, the Garden of Delights on one side of the room, and the other one is like, I forget what it's called, Garden of Death or something. But it's morbid, and it's, these skeletons and they're killing each other. The boys, oh cool. But see, you put it into their context, and I say, see, all artwork, all of these museums, it's not boring artwork. And then, you try and open their mind with that, and then you take them to some more traditional and try and at least get them, not the whole frickin' history class about the painter and the everything in the painting, just a couple of things, and little by little, they'll take an interest. Unless you have a husband who keeps on saying, it's boring, it's boring, it's boring, it's boring. Anything that's cultural or educational is boring. That's the French lycée education. This is one of my big beefs with the French educational system. Americans and the British are bad enough in not teaching their children, boys and girls, to think and to look at evidence and with common sense and a brain, instead of just regurgitating whatever somebody's told them. The French are much, much worse. Now, on the flip side, the French have made, at least with the I'm talking about the expat, the private expat schools globally, the French have maintained a certain standard. But again, that's an elitist. The French, and the reason that they've maintained the standard is the French government, the consulates, oversee the lycée français, the French schools. So they have maintained a certain academic standard, which is not the case with the American and the British expat schools. And it just depends country to country. You can have a really good one, or you can have, and unfortunately, too many of them. Now, you have the drug problem in all of them, and it is growing in all of them, but it's been much worse within the American expat schools. And it's the same reason that you see it in the prep schools, a bunch of entitled narcissistic parents bringing up entitled narcissistic kids and psychopathics. Because I'm seeing, like with the Narcissism Epidemic book, I forgot when Twang and Campbell published that, but it's just becoming, nobody's, because they say, here's the solutions, here's what we have to do. I'm like, yeah, right. You really think all of these little ladies are going to do this voluntarily? Keeping up with the Joneses? ladies and gentlemen, are really going to do this voluntarily? No, 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 no. They're pissed as shit that they can't jet set just because of COVID. They're not going to do this until you throw them up against the wall, and they're just becoming more and more and more and more narcissistic and even psychopathic. And that's why we're seeing an escalation of extremism on the right as much as the left. Because again, it's not ideologically based. These people, you think they believe in? No, it's totally egotistically based. And we can trace this back to, now here's the, I don't have enough room, I don't have this stuff. We can trace it back when I'm looking at the Camelot, Victoria, Queen Victoria, World War I. Then after the destruction of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles and the, how it destroyed Germany, and therefore you had this backlash of the industrialists, and in fact that entrenched their power and their influence, political influence amongst the German people, who, what do they care about? They care about keeping a roof over their heads, eating, jobs, and basic living, and not some existential ideological debates going on amongst the academics, because it's not even going on amongst the politicians. The politicians are just concerned about their constituency and getting voted into office the next time. And there's no ideological convictions there. Now you see it more with the British. I think, like with the Labor, they do have the Labor Party, but the Libertarian Party, of the American Libertarian Party, they have an ideology. They have a political agenda, which the Republicans and the Democrats don't, because they just switch back and forth. At least they have one posted. The Libertarians have one posted on their website, which is a step in the right direction. You got to at least put it down on paper. Then comes the hard part, the implementation. And that's where the Libertarians, I think, are off their mark. It's because lack of leadership. I mean, I'd have to start going into an interview every single member of the Libertarian Party to see if it's hot and cold. It's also called old age for ladies. So that's another thing that nobody seems to be able to distinguish again between having a hypothesis and making a statement as fact, as a truth, are two different things. And even when I have affirmative stance on one issue or another, or something to say, whether the sky be blue or not, because I could even make, that's what a true debater would be like, well, yeah, you want me to argue that the sky is red? I could argue that. I could even argue that. I could. And bring evidence and all sorts of stuff, because we perceive it as blue. Not all animals see the same as we do. So maybe, I'm sure I could find an animal out there who would see, when they look at the sky, they see red instead of blue. So is it blue or is it red? See what you see what I'm saying? A real debater, and women, that's where our forte is. So, you know, and this is in fact where men brought in debate and some rules of debate. That are set in stone and are not a new rule every single moment or every single day, like women will do when they get into power. Solution is not the oppression and silencing of women, because the majority are just creating havoc. So the easiest thing is just shut them all up. It is educating and socializing your women as well as your men to be intelligent, informed, human beings rather than animals, just concerned about fulfilling their survival needs, which when they get a surplus of money or resources translates into hoarding and buying and buying and buying and obsessive buying and addictive personalities and everything in excess. You know, the nerds who, because this is another thing that's going on with the aristocracy and the ruling elite, Americans and Westerns, but this is going on globally, and this is the think tanks and managerialism, that the new aristocracy are the intellects, the nerds. And that's also why all of within the workplaces, within the development community, you see it particularly there, but you see it up on Capitol Hill, you see it throughout Washington. Ivy League school, straight A's. Everybody got to get straight A's. The straight A student is proof that you are intelligent. SAT scores, LSAT, all of those different standardized testing, they do not, you know, all they test is the ability. And I mean, my older sister even said that to me. She went to Smith. Oh, it's just figuring out what they want you to say on the, you know, what they want you to respond on the test. Yeah, those are the ones who excel in all of these schools. Figure out what the teacher, what the school wants you to say on the test. You get a straight A's, you go to a good school, you know, good college, the lower elementary will help you get into the good charter school or prep school, then into a good college, and then that's your passport to a life of success amongst living, you know, keeping up with the Joneses. But we see time and time and time again that that's complete faulty premise. If you want to only talk about in terms of their la-la land and their paradigm of where importance is only those who make, you know, millionaires, and now it's billionaires, millionaires, that's, you know, chump change. Like Zuckerberg, like Bill Gates, like Bezos, like Soros. I'm like, well, we can go through one by one. That's success. You know, yeah, they made a lot of money, but Bill Gates and Zuckerberg were college dropouts. I didn't drop out of college. I mean, I finished. I know I had to finish, and I did a bit of business administration, which I think was I mean, even if I had never gone into business, it was a very, very, very good bachelor's education for life. Taught me the principles of contract law. Ooh, everything that I've done is just with one course of commercial law at the undergrad degree that taught me contracts, writs, and torts. But see, I know how to use my brain. Well, the problem is a lot of times I couldn't even tell. Sometimes I got a bad grade because the teacher didn't like me, because either they knew I was smarter than them, because I mean, I knew which teachers didn't like me. I remember, oh, the history teachers in column N at Foxcroft. Well, the one in England, I know why. It gets to the founding fathers, which gets into Fletcher, her stuff. But and John Paul Jones and John Dickinson in my family tree, and me being personally responsible for the American Revolution. I did not. I just sat there going, oh my God, lady, if looks could kill, you'd really be killing me right now. I was a kid of 14 years old. I didn't understand why she hated me so much, but she did. Anyway, teachers are not God either. And believe me, we got some real, you've got some good ones out there, but you have others who have no business being in that profession whatsoever. And I've seen that time and time and time again. That's another problem with oversight, and it's across the board in educational systems. So I'm gonna try and wrap this up with, I'll try and briefly go into this because it gets into and the Fourth Reich, quite a bit of dialogue. Oh, but I think I already read this one. Leonini. Yeah, Paolo Leonini. Yeah, I already read this one. But so education results far exceed those of modern schools. One has only to read old debates in the congressional records or scan the books published in the 1800s to realize that our ancestors of a century ago commanded a use of the language far superior to our own. So, as I say, I'd already read this in another video, so I won't get into it all again. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present education convention fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own good will upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers of men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great science, great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is very simple as well as very beautiful one, to train these people as we find them to be a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. Now, I have to say, from a sociological perspective or psychological perspective, psychosociological perspective, he's right. You know, and first, this whole like fad that everybody has to be a scientist, everybody has to be a great artist, everybody has to be a great author, everybody has to you know, be a great poet or letter of men to succeed in life, to be an intellect, or to have any kind of brain and not be some bubba out on the farm who done barely knows how to read and write. And the libertines, that is their agenda here in DC, that we're all intellects and superior. And this is where they get, there's this elitist that's anti-democratic amongst these people who espouse they're all promoting democratic principles. I mean, the Fletcher woman as well, democratic principles, America. I mean, you know, this is a perfect, the Fletcher and that whole group, this is a perfect example of it's just social climbing. This way she gets to travel all over the country, give speeches, get up on a podium and play Cornelia Guest, Meghan McCain, because she's, you know, she cashed in on that whole debutante. You see, alt-right, Republican Party, and John McCain. I mean, John McCain is just as implicated. He's deceased now, but this will have ramifications for the McCain Institute, for everything, as much as former Senator Bennett Johnston from the Democratic Party. I contacted Senator Johnston in 2007 when they started screwing around, the court started screwing around with me, as I did Republican Congressman Clay Shaw, well, his daughter, Jen Shaw, from Foxcroft. Can you please just ask your dad to pick up the phone and call the consulate in Madrid? I'm sure one little phone call from your dad saying this man is crazy, he's gonna kill her, and the courts are covering it all up. He's gonna kill her. Well, you know, the idea through the courts, their idea first was get me in a psychiatric ward. My case, it's parallel to the Jeffrey Epstein case in the cover-ups with the Virginia Giuffre. You saw, or we see how all of that cover-up is going to the highest level and how this is getting covered up in the local courthouses, and why the local courthouses really need to be cleaned up. And that's where the crux of the problems, because it was covered up there. And then until it got into the press. And this is what we're seeing all the time, and why the victims are scrambling around trying to get sympathy with somebody in the press so that they can, you know, get in the limelight. And that's the only way that anybody gets government action, which that, you know, they have an obligation to do under the US Constitution, but they're not, and nobody will help me take them to the international courts on that. So of course they keep on getting away, basically with murder. So we got too many chefs spoiling the soup. too many people who want to be experts, which these NGOs, see, this turns her into an overnight expert. This Fletcher woman, Paula Lucas is the same, Ethel Kennedy is the same, Carrie Kennedy is the same, all of them. But, you know, and also like with Carrie Kennedy, you give her an honorary law degree. Why not? Because none of the lawyers out there know any more about law than she does. So who's going to notice? Nobody, except me. And if anybody does notice, they're not going to say anything because the donor money that they want for their NGO in order so that they can jet set around the world and get on podiums and give lots of speeches to all of these, you know, different groups. They won't get the money because they'll expose the truth. And as I say, why I haven't gotten, I mean, I get no views. Nobody in my entourages is spreading the word about all of the information I have posted on war and domestic terrorism or taking back America for the people. Foxcroft motto when I was there, I mean, it was a saying all of the girls used to say. I was like, what is this supposed to mean? I told two friends, they told two friends, who told two friends, who told two friends. And I'm sure that comes back from Miss Charlotte, who started the school in the 1920s. I'm sure because Washington was such a lawless place, the refined young girls were taken out to the country so they wouldn't see all the decadence and all of the chicanery going on in this city. And which eventually gave rise to Emily Post and a rise of the manners and etiquette fad, if you will, that she brought in. This was, I think that was starting in the 1920s, which of course was too little too late because we had the crash in 29. And also her, I mean, there's another parallel I do. Okay, the parallel with Jeffrey Epstein, the Princess Alice, I guess that would got me off on deviated on that. But Princess Alice, because I'm pretty sure her husband flipped out when he lost the Greek-Turk war. And that's when they had thrown in a psychiatric ward. And son was Prince Philip. He abandoned Prince Philip, takes the mother out of the picture, puts her in a psychiatric ward, and ships the poor kid off to boarding school and did a lot of psychological damage to Prince Philip. And so they're a parallel. I said, see, that's very, very much similar, because okay, it wasn't a war. It was when my ex crashed and burned as director of the Treasury Department of Banco Ganadero in Colombia. It sent him over the edge. Then when I'm in Spain, the first objective was have me locked up in a psychiatric ward. When they saw that didn't work, because I saw it coming and I thwarted them there. When they saw that didn't work, then they, and I mean, I was thrown into the lion's den. You know, surprise, surprise. I had no illusions that I was going to go through some, you know, wonderful process, but I was horrified, absolutely horrified at the illegality of everything that was going on with my lawyers, with all of the documents that you have to go and get, just the paperwork, the entire process And you know, it was after when I got to the United States that I sat down, and because this was, I'm building my complaint process within the Spanish agencies. Bar Association of Madrid is one of them, but it's not. There's Defensor de Pueblo. They're all up shit's creek without a paddle because they all covered it up. I was like, oh, fine, you know, you want to do this. I've known from the beginning that nobody at the doors that I'm knocking at are going to help me. Okay. The first one, I thought I would get some help when I first, you know, okay, domestic violence, and, you know, they're pulling this crap. I'm going to go there. They're going to, you know, get me a lawyer, because I kept on saying, just like all of us victims keep on saying to these NGOs, but I need a lawyer who will defend me and who knows something about the frickin' law. And they'll all tell you the same thing. Oh, no, no. And this is globally. No, that doesn't exist. So what do you people do? Oh, we help, we promote the building of shelters for battered women. Oh, okay. So you're going to cover up for the violation of my rights and the fact that the courts are not helping me and are re-victimizing me. And then you're going to offer me a shelter. And this is how you're going to assist me and justify your nonprofit organization? You got to be freaking kidding me. I'm going to see your ass in court. I'm going to expose you for the frauds that you are. Now, the mujeres separadas and divorciadas in Spain, that woman's been around for like 70 years. Since the Constitution started, because there was 1978. And Reina Sofia is just as responsible. Perfect example. Her husband killed his younger brother when he was 18 and the kid was 14 over jealousy over a tennis, well, I can forget it was a tennis or golf tournament. So of course they need some dumb bimbo to marry him. Just like they brought in Princess Diana, just like they brought in Queen Victoria, just like they brought in well, Queen Elizabeth, she was Queen Elizabeth II. She was in line, but you know, she was not brought up to be a queen. She also was pampered, did not, before Victoria, the queens were highly, and the ruling class women were highly educated, are not the dumb bimbos. Now, maybe their schooling, I would have some issues with some of their schooling because this gets into the social sciences. But they were academically educated, but they also, I mean, this is before radio and records. And who did you have sing? Well, most of the time it was the women in the evenings at the piano who would entertain and provide some music and or read. No TV, no radio. I mean, okay, people would sit around playing cards as well, but not everybody. So the activity, all of that, it was the upper crust women who provided that on a daily basis. So Norman Dodd. Okay, so yeah, that's a tremendous amount of control and involvement for one group. this, it's talking about Rockefeller. It is not incorrect to say that the major segment of today's modern institution exists not because of honest study and concern for the truth in respective fields, but because Rockefeller's money was available at their inception to fund incredible PR campaigns, establish professional publications and societies, steamroll over any competition, regardless of their legitimacy or value, and continue selling the ideas until accepted and institutionalized within the basic fabric of society. Rhetoric matters. You say it long enough, there's, as I said, going on, I'm going to finish this, so I'll continue on with the Fletcher and the vice president of Moms for America and the next one. But with the Animal House, you just keep on repeating it and repeating it, bullshit. Just keep on saying it long enough and loud enough until everybody keeps on just going, yeah, yeah, and then repeating it, and it becomes the new rule. It becomes the new norm. That's what I'm trying to do. I mean, oh my Lord, sometimes I'm like, how many times do I have to repeat myself? When it is a toddler, when it is a 6-year-old child, when it is even a 10-year-old. By the time I'm at 15, 16, 17, yeah, repetition should dramatically start to drop off by that age, or should have already started. Yeah, by that age, they should have been given progressive autonomy over from the time they're born. Slowly, less control from you and more self-control from them. And why it's important, I mean, as I thank God my kids were 14, 15 when they were separated from me. But I know I raised really good kids with brains. And I've just held on to that they made mistakes and probably floundered there without me to guide them and support them. But I just hope, in the future, it made them understand some of the things that maybe they wouldn't have understood if I had been around and been able to protect them, like I want to do. So I guess I'll leave it there, but see, these are the really the same. And here, there's another thing, and I guess I'll finish with that. Norman Dodd, Director of Research for the House Select Committee to investigate foundations and comparable organizations, reported that in 1952, the president of the Ford Foundation told him bluntly that operating under directive from the White House, his foundation was to use our grant money power so as to alter our life in the United States that we can comfortably merge with the Soviet Union. Now, with the collapse of communism, the advent of the United Nations and NATO, along with various economic treaties now in place, it would appear that this globalist goal is close to becoming realized. So just to finish up there, yeah, this gets into the international development community, of which IMF, World Bank, UN are at the lead, and my beef with them. See, I'm a globalist. I mean, global expats. I think you know, that's pretty self-evident. But what I want is a paradigm shift that the international development community is out there promoting with their SDGs and very vocally promoting. But if they were implementing that, why would Dr. Kim have left the World Bank as its president, leaving the door open for David Malpass, chief economist of Bear Stearns in 2008, who didn't see the economic crisis coming? I saw it coming way a year before and was screaming bloody murder. My idiot banker, lycée français, educated husband had listened to me instead of trying to destroy my project, which would have made us billionaires today. I mean, he really cut his nose off to spite his face, because now when I finally do get this thing up and running, and when I do go to the courts for damages, he's not entitled to any of it. Whereas if I'd gotten the company up when we were married, he would have been entitled to half of everything, because it's common property law in Spain. And I can tell you, I was really pissed off. So see, my siblings are the same. They're all gonna, in one way or another, when all of this collapses, and you know, my parents wouldn't have been in a nursing home, wouldn't have got COVID. Well, I can't say they wouldn't have got COVID, but they would have had a very, very slim chance, because I would have had in a private home. And I mean, at the end, they definitely needed care. And I don't complain, and I don't fault the nursing home, because it's a fact. And my brother was going to put him, you know, his high-rise 1-bedroom apartment. We were like, my God, that really, they really would. At least in the nursing home, there's some sort of, you know, some control barriers. So, but, and my father's treatment, the work on thrombosis, I would have been able to promote that. This Kawasaki disease with the COVID, there's all sorts of thrombosis stuff that I know my father's research could help on. No, but see, all of these little ladies in my entourage, whether they be in Europe or the United States, alt-right, alt-left, and it doesn't matter if they're the higher echelons of power. Now I can pull names out of a hat. I already, you know, John McCain. It would go into the women, Meghan McCain, The View. I mean, you talk about somebody who's just promoting alt-right extremism, just like Megyn Kelly. They haven't done any research. They're real. I mean, really, they have no more intelligence and no more brains than Elizabeth Elliot, Carla Cullati, Jocelyn van der Hagen, or any of the bimbos over in the Institute for Capacity Development or the International Monetary Fund that I knew when I worked there. And these are, you know, I couldn't believe idiots. They had not just the secretaries, the economists as well. And they have working in the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And they just jump. You know, this is their grappling up the ladder of success, and it's concentrated the labor markets in academia and made a new aristocratic intellectual ruling class in Washington. I mean, Washington is one of the most highly educated and highly paid cities in the world. And its sole existence, its creation, was head of the federal government and housing and, offices for the American government, who was supposed to serve the people instead of their own pocketbooks, and a frickin' frat house where everybody just wants to party hardy. Okay, some are on cocaine and opioids, and others do the fine wining and dining, but there's no difference. I don't care if you're snorting cocaine, smoking pot, or drinking expensive wine and beer. And oh Lord, when I came back to the United States and they gave me a beer list, because I wanted a freaking beer. Una caña. And they said, what kind? I was like, well, what do you have? And they started, let me bring you the list. I was like, oh no, oh my Lord. The Americans really, really have gone on the wacko wagon. This whole stuff. I mean, really, it reminds me of, Versailles, the Chateau de Loire in its heyday. And I wasn't around maybe in a previous life, but I was, most of my ancestry is in England, so I've been on the other side of the channel. But I can just imagine from looking, and then you have the Spaniards. There's the what's it called? Go out there for strawberries in strawberry season. It's wonder. Aranjuez. El Palacio de Aranjuez. And it's a miniature Versailles. They have this porcelain room. It's a small, the rooms are smaller, but it is the Spanish copy of Versailles, and all of that opulence. And you can see they have these boats that was for the queens and kings, and they would float around. Whereas their people are hungry. That's not what being a king and queen is all about. And this is why, the monarchy has slowly, ever since Henry VIII was the first British monarch that was a peaceful king. I was watching Camelot with Richard Gere. That's a good movie. God, there's so much crap out there. I go back to watching old movies that I've seen before because I'm like, oh, well, I need to entertain, even I need to turn it off sometimes. It was, but that Camelot, this was, the end of the wars, we weren't going to fight anymore, and we were going to have a peaceful kingdom where we worked for the good of the people and we cared for the people rather than, and of course, she ends up falling for Richard Gere, like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman. Oh God, that really got the panties up in an uproar with some groups. I remember when I was living abroad, and that scandal of, everybody was uproar. Is promoting prostitution. I was like, I don't. I think it's so much of a fairy tale. Not even the dumb bimbos out there think that they're going to be a prostitute and have some guy drive up in a Ferrari and save them. I don't think that was too much the message. But see, the whole thing doesn't matter. Just take a group out there and whack-a women, and they'll twist it around any way you want. Because I'm like, excuse me, you guys are the ones who promoting prostitution all over the place, whoring of your daughters. And I can't get a job because I won't sleep with anybody these days. But in the 1980s, that wasn't the case. And I'm smarter, I'm more knowledgeable. I speak 3 languages now, which I only spoke English back then. I mean, I could do the job of anybody in this town better than that, including the president of the World Bank, managing director of the IMF, president of the United States. Pick them out of a hat, anywhere up and down the job chain, the food chain. I could manage any of the restaurants better than they're being managed. But I'm sitting here, soon to be evicted. And my money is really going down. I'm hoping God's going to come up with a miracle pretty soon. Again, comfortably merge with the Soviet Union. Now, let's just put it in this term, if it's to merge with a Soviet Union a la Putin, well, no, of course not. And this is precisely the international development community where it's dropped the ball. Because even Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, there was a vision for a global world. And my vision as well is a global world, but it's a peaceful world. And my vision, if you will, with how that can be achieved through global expats is, in a nutshell, you get, this is my elevator speech pitch. My idea is you really, really want peace and economic stability and sustainable development goals and all of that, those things in the world. Or let's just talk about the peace treaties, because the sustainable development goals that's applied by the wives. So signing the treaty, that's the men's domain. You really want to get all of that done, because that's the first step. You get to the wives of the movers and shakers of the world. And you tell them to tell their husbands that they're not getting any dinner and they're sleeping on the couch until they get their shit together and until they start signing those peace treaties and doing their jobs, which is providing good governance for us women and children within the community, whether it be a global community or a tiny little town, doesn't matter. But of course, then you need to get to the women to explain to them that globalization is not, well, these are the expat ones. Globalization is unsustainable and will end in violence and be self-destructive for you as much as for everybody else, if all you care about in your life is going shopping, jet setting, and grappling up the ladder of success and keeping up with the Joneses and make giving enough appearance for people to believe that you're respectable, because they never scratch below the surface. Because as long as you have $1 million home and lots of fine wine or cocaine, I mean, whatever the drug of choice is, whether your drug is cocaine, shopping mall, or the church going. I mean, I always compare. I'm like, oh, the Spaniards, they just exchanged their worshiping of the Catholic Church to the worshiping of Corte Inglés. That's the secular version of religious Catholicism, if you will, in Spain today. It's been increasingly that way. I saw the good effects of a unified euro and a European Union, as well as the detrimental effects of that. And this is a lot to do with the narcissism epidemic growing in Europe, which was exported from the United States, and which is being, this is what the soft diplomacy is about, from the State Department and the Federation of American Women's Clubs overseas, is one of their tools of that soft diplomacy. With the French, it's the Alliance Française and their Lycée Français. So see, these, before women were in the workplace, which is bullshit, because they've always been in the workplace. It was just the ruling elite women. If your husband was making enough for you not to have to work and help support the family financially, then you didn't hang out at country clubs or a Versailles, depending on which era you are. It's so that you take an active interest in the community and the social order, the social interaction. The men, it was the politics and commerce. And I love Dave Chappelle when he comes out and he says that he empathizes with, like the Women's March people. It's like, well, okay, yeah, you little ladies, but what you need is a man to organize you. Dave Chappelle, I could not agree more. Women do not know how to organize, whereas men, it's all about team and bonding, men bond. See, women have their women bonding. Now, I've never been into that, because most of it is gossiping and being liked and going shopping, and that's just, it's not my MO. But there are other women out there who are like me. They don't, their idea of a friendship is not sitting there gossiping for 2 hours, on the phone after you just left the tea party with them for another 2 hours. And all of these academics, that's all they're doing is gossip. They're opining, as my father said. Many years ago, he said one of the big problems is everybody's, the mistakes that have been made on the past have just been built upon with even more mistakes. So you've got these derivatives, like if we go back to Freud, I identify that where with the Oedipus and is it Alexis? I forget, but Oedipus complex, which no, little girls don't have sexual fantasies about their father. This was, in fact, women with how shall I say it, neuroses and psychoses as adults because they had been sexually molested as children. And that was scandalous in the Victorian era. So no, we're going to make the victim here be the father. And that's what's going on, today. And even with the psychiatrist and the sociologist, the psychologist, the court-appointed psychiatrist, sociologist, well, it's court-appointed psychologists and social workers. All of these people need to be investigated. There's no oversight whatsoever. And also because the ladies in the communities are too busy at their country clubs or grappling up the ladder of success like Charmaine Curry and Christine Lagarde and Ariana Huffington and Anne Sinclair, Kathy Lady Meyer, Paula Lucas, I can go on and on and on and on. Now, all of these ladies, Ingrid Betancourt, Astrid Betancourt, all these ladies need to be held to account under RICO, Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organization Act, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and Patriot Act. Now, one of the reasons why men kept women out of politics and out of commerce, because the type of shenanigans that all of these little ladies, their wives and their girlfriends, so these men are not sitting pretty because they could actually have some, they're going to have financial fallout, but could have legal ramifications themselves. But it's because of the shenanigans that these little ladies are getting involved in with their power games and their backstabbing bitchery and Adrian Thapa, everybody who's protecting Adrian Thapa and Gina Paoni, you picked the wrong team to bat for. And everyone who's protecting Anne Beatrix Keller and John Harper and the IMF Family Association, again, you picked the wrong team to bat for. And everybody who's protecting Belén Martín and Senora Guerrero and Jorge Capel in Spain and Senor Garro and the judges and everybody involved in that, and everybody who keeps on, with protecting, because I just keep on upping the ante. I'm not going away. Even if I end up living on the street, when the House of Cards collapses, I'll be back. And I'll be back to pick up the pieces. And I'll be back and say, okay, this person needs to go to prison. That person needs to go to prison. Then we'll get our Nuremberg trials too. But, however, what you have to understand by this time, there'll be a lot of angry, extremely angry victors who want blood. Unfortunately, it'll be black, brown, yellow, or white who comes out victors. Are they going to want a victor's justice, or are they want to change the trajectory and hold everybody to account under, common standard principles, and that upholds the rights of the victims as much as the accused? Because that didn't happen in the Nuremberg trials, one. And one of the reasons why it has done extreme damage to the court systems and the standards of rights of the accused as well as the victims within the courts. So, it keeps on payback, bouncing back and forth. We see that with the revolutions as well. The revolutions are just increasing extremism because it is not dealing with the fundamental problems, which are social. Until you change the education and the mindset of your youth, instead of, oh no, we're going to produce another generation of narcissists and psychopaths who are even more brain dead than their parents. It's hard, but they seem to be getting even stupider and stupider if Washington is anything to judge by. I mean, this is a good sampling of your what your best and brightest schools are churning out. And it's scary. I mean, really scary. I mean, every time I turn around, I'm like, okay, you got a PhD, but can I ask you, do you know how to tie your shoes and boil an egg? But I don't think so. I mean, they're as, pampered and rendered helpless as Queen Victoria was by her crazy wacko social climbing, because her mother was determined. Queen Victoria wasn't supposed to, that it was just by a, what was it, George the Fourth, King George the Fourth, I believe, death. But so, Queen Victoria was a surprise, and her mother was a real social climber, and that's when she married the King of England, or I think it was the future King of England at that point. I forget. No, I forget. But it was for that she was going to have her daughter become Queen of England, particularly when her husband dies. And she's only got that one daughter who is the heir to the throne. And she was not even going to let the daughter walk down the frickin' stairs by herself. I mean, you talk about highly dysfunctional childhood development crap. Everything that was done to Queen Victoria when she was young was a list of what you should not do in bringing up your daughter or any child. And the consequence of what happens when you do is seen perfectly clear with Queen Victoria. And Queen Elizabeth basically had that same Victorian. And since the Victorian era, that has been the role model of ruling elite women. And I mean, I saw it in Spain as well. Oh Lord, there they really, I mean, you talk about frills and lace, and I mean, I was like, God, the Florence Eisman designer dresses, my straight jacket dresses that my mom would stick us in when we were little. We're not, I mean, thank you, Lord, compared to this stuff. Look like a freaking frou-frou. So I mean, yeah, no, like even the boys' clothes, particularly the baby stuff in Spain. When my children, I mean, it's changed now because you have the like the Gap, so more modern. But before, you did not have, you know, it was like the maternity clothes back then. Some tender, you know, ladies, that has improved. Yes, we've made some progress. So it's not all been total detrimental progress, but it has been progress. But so okay, I'm going to talk. I'll get into this Fletcher woman because there's her book I wanted to cover, and some articles that she's written, because it is this Moms for America. Well, let's put, I mean, they're on my radar. She's on my first range of connections on LinkedIn. Of course, I mean, has she ever contacted me? Is she, you know, promoting anything? No. This is a perfect example. She's too busy out there cashing in. They apparently after the January 6th, they've got some issues with their money supply. I think that's still an issue, but this is exactly how, you know, all of these, I'm going to shut them down because they're fraudulent. They're getting money, they're receiving money so that the people in their organization can travel around on speaking engagements and publish books and produce their books, and be given a forum and a podium to espouse their lies and propaganda. Because this is all show with the Fletcher woman. Nobody does any research. These women just come out there and say that they're an expert, like Ethel Kennedy, human rights expert. I'm going to start this foundation, human rights NGO, and cash in. I mean, the Clintons, for example, I want an investigation into their foundation, what they've been doing. The Obamas, same thing. They're like worth 30 million. None of these people, Michelle and Barack Obama, don't come from money. The Clintons, I mean, if you look, the Bushes, to their credit, their net worth didn't go up as a result of their presidencies. And I've never been, you know, a fan of the Bushes, because they're too much in bed with the warmongering and corporate greed of the alt-right. But the alt-left has just copied the corporate greed, packaged it up a little bit differently with their foundations and their own corporations, because now you find as many billionaires on the left as you do the right, even maybe more. They're the new Barish millionaires. But so see, the Democrats, it's just about power, political and economic power for their various factions. And anybody who jeopardizes that paradigm, status quo that they want to maintain, they'll destroy them. Right. With the men, it's usually, you know, the JFK, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, you shoot him. I mean, women, I was watching, what was it, some hitman on some movie, or I forget which movie it was on, but this hitman, he's gone, no, women and children, you know, they're not off limit, you know, women and children, no, we just kill each other. See, women want to get into positions of power. Unfortunately, in that game, they will shoot you dead. I mean, with women, again, 90% of physical and sexual violence on the planet is perpetrated by men. Now, women are the motor behind that, but they usually are not, you know, as I say, we've got two crazy people in here. This woman artist who keeps on, you know, screaming and yelling. She is drunk and popping all of her pharmaceutical and can't keep up with all these pills these people are taking. And screams and yells and starts throwing stuff. See, this is, and then I'm not supposed to get angry about that. I'm supposed to just like talk to her the next day, or what, you know, because she can go on for several days. But then when her tirades are over, I'm not supposed to be angry about her throwing my things, about her drug pusher breaking into the house or coming into the house in the middle of the night, coming into my room and stealing money and going through my things. See, I'm not supposed to be angry about that. Now she's angry that that drug pusher went into her room, but the woman's coming around because of her. Now, does she say, oh, sorry? No, she gets angry because I'm angry. It was the same with my siblings. Problem with the recording of the memorial service for my parents, the Zoom, we did the Zoom thing. We had to do some re-recording. My older sister, who had done the original stuff with her daughter, had created such typical cacophony. When I heard there was a committee for that thing, my older sister and her daughter were the committee, because my younger sister got jealous because she got upset that if she had known there was a committee for that thing, she had wanted to be on the committee. So there had been such, you know, I've been working on my work here. So I'm like, you know, okay, fine. If she, because this is the thing, if somebody wants me to handle something, I'm like, I'll handle it. Now, if you want to handle it, that's fine. You do it, because I got other things always here that I can do. So I don't have to be in power and control of that. But it got so you know, back and forth and discussions with, you know, my a lot of fighting between my sister and her daughter. So the daughter didn't want to do the you know, retaping and coordinating that, because that's the Zoom and then uploading it, and which is I was doing anyway with the videos, and organizing it and maintaining it on the YouTube. So I said, okay, fine, I'm going to do it. But then I had to crop things down. Now, this was new for me. I'd never done video cropping, but I'm like, okay, I got to, you know, learn. So it took me a couple, but, you know, this is, so I said, okay, you guys, we've got, you know, this, that, I'll crop it down. I can put this together, figure out how to do it. I'll give you 1 week, because we had several videos. You tell me which portions you want me to include in writing. You say, this video, time slot this to time this. because I'm not going to be going through and you say, oh, where I start saying such and such, and then I stop saying such and such. No, 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 no. Because that takes, take me hours and hours and hours to listen through all of this freaking stuff. And then, oh, but you cut it off too soon or you cut it off too late. I know this from project management. Here's your deadline. 3 weeks later, when I finalized everything, because I said, I'm moving on. Since I'm doing this all alone, I made the decisions all alone. And then I get an email from my brother saying, here, I want you to crop it here. I want you to crop it there. I want you to crop it here. I want you to crop it there. I mean, I was like, how dare you? How dare you? Because then when I said, oh, no, 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 I'm sorry. Deadline's passed. There is no, what you're asking me to do is going to take me another 10 hours because now I have to recrop everything and reprocess everything. How dare you? How dare you? I mean, even if you were paying me, I would do it because then I'd be charging you by hour and I'd be like, well, it's your money. A job, let's say a couple of $100. You should have paid me. Now you're gonna have to pay me like $1,500, $2,000. That's your problem. Yeah, I could use the money. But he's paying me or anything like that. And I had to fight tooth and nail because I wanted this so that my children could see it. Because my children have been canceled from my family as much as I have for the past 15 years. Conveniently so that my older sister and her 2 children are in the limelight. That was the agenda. This is my family. My mother is going to let my ex-husband kill me, or sitting there going, oh yeah, get her in a psychiatric ward, because then you'll owe me and I can come and milk you for money. That's how the people in my world think. It's all about their personal Machiavellian agendas. And believe me, this is the typical of everybody in Washington. This is the new normal. Chacun pour soi. Everybody for themselves. Now, if you have $1 million house or a yacht or something like that, then we're your friend. But you don't have, all these trappings of wealth that we can come in and cash in on your fine wine and your fine cocaine or whatever it is. We're not interested in you. See, none of the relationships. That's why you have such high divorce rates. Everybody, I mean, that's the attitude that I've gotten from. I opted out of the workplace. Therefore, I should just accept my lot as a Stepford wife, deposed trophy wife, that if I'm widowed or divorced, then either I find myself a new meal ticket husband, or I just, do a widow burning and commit suicide. But see, where the feminists and where all of the HR people have miscalculated their game with that one is because that is their agenda. Anybody who threatens, and we're seeing this, the increase in suicides, and you see that from the bullying. I mean, and that is the objective. I mean, that I show with the Institute for Capacity Development, my complaint about workplace bullying in the IMF, which everybody swept under the carpets. Been looking for a lawyer. I mean, with that thing alone, why did they go after Prince Andrew with the Virginia Giuffre and Epstein case, when I've been knocking at the door of all of these lawyers for 15 years now? And they just ignore it till she goes away, ignore it till she goes away. Because the only thing these NGOs offer is a shoulder to cry on. They're charity organizations. And they exist to provide an income for their staff to propagate faulty narratives, lies, and misinformation. Because even if they are, and most of them aren't. I mean, a lot of the Cato Institute, those are the professional experts. So that's the elite, and that's where the big money is. And you see those NGOs, those think tanks, they've got huge budgets and huge staff. The smaller ones, of course, smaller budgets, smaller staff, but it's still the same industry. And of course, they don't have any kind of college titles, because it's not education, it's just the title. But it doesn't matter. They just go out and they got enough friends in their entourage and who like what they have to say and like them, then they'll get the donations that they need for the staff that they need. And sometimes, these will be just one or two. There's some court watch. There's, for example, one woman who does court watch in DC. Just one woman, because she left. I guess she wasn't getting enough from, it was a court watch they had set up. It's from Texas, that group. But with all of this court watch, Renee Beaker, National Organization for Women, court watch, all these court watches things, I want, excuse me, you're watching this crap? Why are we not going to the international courts like I have prepared the cases under international law and that challenge Gonzalez Linehan versus USA 2011, challenge Gonzalez Carreño versus Spain 2014, and clean this up, the Wild West stuff, for once and for good. That's all we have to do. And that's where you get, I'm looking at the Tea Party, the Libertarian, or the Liberty, the Tea Party and the Freedom Caucus. I mean, sure, I go through the various individuals, and I'm sure one of my big divide with, because mainly Republicans and agrarian, which, like, well, maybe we can be buddies, because I think we are on the same page about most of our stuff. My divide there is with the fossil fuels. However, I think there as well, I do have some things. It's actually what I was looking into, quarries. See what happens when you put me on lockdown for 15 years and internet access. I just keep on looking and looking and looking and looking. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get bored. They go a little stir crazy sometimes, and I would like a little social interaction with people. Don't scream at me and don't insult me and don't throw things at me or try and kill me. Oh, but I was saying that with the woman here, she'll say that she's gonna, kill us all and burn the house down. Women, I don't believe her. Now, if Jim, the man, and he's got a gun, he started with that, I'd start calling police pretty quick. So this is where, men and women, and also a profile of the person. Some real wackos. Believe me, all the little ladies in Foxcroft, when they get out of prison and they're living like I am, you're gonna be in for a rude awakening, or even in prison. Well, I guess boarding school was already good preparation for them. We always used to call him that was in prison. I was like, oh my God, ladies. Yeah, it's a country club prison you guys are in. So that's pretty much today. So tomorrow I'll look more in depth about Kimberly Fletcher. She has a book as well that she wrote. And of course she has articles in public, the Blaze, I think it is, publications. I was on the Huffington Post as well. I mean, doing the opt-in. There, I didn't do these long things. There, I was totally politically correct within, 700 words. That's all anybody doesn't. I mean, they can't even read a tweet. So, but nobody ever promoted me or made any of my stuff go viral, even though it's oh, this is not popping up. So I'll read that tomorrow. And in her book, I forget what it's called, Women Something. But of course, this Fletcher woman was at the Capitol, and her rhetoric is helping to flame the fire, or fan the fire, fan the flames of the fire. Yeah, and see, that's why nobody will give me a voice, because I am centrist, and I will debunk as much of the faulty rhetoric from the alt-right as I will debunk the faulty rhetoric from the alt-left. And those are the two, Republicans and Democrats who are in power, and I don't like anybody in that they don't like. No invites for the unlikables and touchables. So have a nice evening. Bye-bye.